Good morning, buongiorno, buongiorno, buon pomeriggio agli italiani. Good morning to the United States. It's 9 in the morning in Chicago and 4 in the afternoon in Italy. So I would start with our webinars. My name is Silvia Raffa and I'm the Managing Director of the Italian American Chamber of Commerce in Chicago. On behalf of the Italian Chamber, I welcome you to our True Italian Taste webinar, a conversation with William Terlato, organized in collaboration with Assocamerestero, the Ministry of Economic Development, and Terlato Wines International, and promoted by the Banca Popolare di Sondrio, Promos Italia, and Wine2Wine of Veronafiere. This series of webinars will help Italian companies understand the entry and development dynamics for authentic and certified Italian products in the United States, a topic of special importance given the radical market changes resulting from the coronavirus pandemic. A special welcome to the numerous connected Italian companies today. And I would also like to extend a special welcome to our guest speakers, including William Terlato, Chief Executive Officer of Terlato Wine Group, Giovanni Mantovani, CEO of Veronafiere and Vinitaly, and our moderator of today, Amy Ezrin, founder of the Biermann Guy. Thank you for joining us today. 2020 has proven to be an extraordinary hard year worldwide, which is why we at the Chamber are taking proactive steps to provide support facing these difficulties. Last year, we opened an office in Milan at the headquarters of the Banca Popolare di Sondrio to provide greater services and support for the internationalization of the Italian companies. In this moment of great economic crisis, our chamber has decided to take concrete steps to help Italian companies, not only through the classic activity of executing exports plan, but also with new implementation services, such as product registration and the import and storage of goods. This will allow the Chamber to present physical products directly to American buyers immediately. In fact, beginning this November 2020, our Chamber will offer over 20,000 square feet of storage space to its members to help products reach the American market quicker. This effort aimed all allowing Italian companies to optimize their presence in the country with low investment and maintenance costs. Here, I would like to underline the importance of export for our country. Exportation was the only component of the GDP in Italy to grow continuously from 2010 to today. In 2019, export exceeded the record amount of 475 billion euro, with a surplus of the trade balance then touched 53 billion euro, representing 32% of the Italian GDP and therefore essential for the Italian-American growth. The United States imported more than 44 billion euros from Italy in 2019. Unfortunately, 2020 clearly marks a moment of sharp slowdown for the Italian export, which marks a minus 19.2% in the first 6 months of 2020. The most heavily damaged industry is the fashion industry, which with its 30% lost, convey the size of the contraction that occurred due to the international health crisis. Only the agri-food sector recorded a positive performance of 1.9%, so certainly a good starting point for this industry. In this year of emergency, one of our objectives is certainly to keep Italian companies updated on the opportunities offered by the new market conditions in an attempt to maintain a high quality image of Italy and made in Italy in the United States. I would like to quickly introduce you to our speakers of today, to William Terlato, Chief Executive Officer of Terlato Wine Group and Terlato Wines since 2008. William Terlato continues to blaze new trails through innovation, reaffirming his family's position as a leading importer, marketer, and winner of luxury wine in the United States. Today, due in large part of his vision and dynamic leadership, Terlato Wines has a leading market share of wines $20 and up sold in the US. Building on a tradition of excellence, his father and grandfather established more than 60 years ago, Terlato has expanded the company's luxury portfolio far beyond its original core business of importing fine Italian wines. Terlato now represents acclaimed family-owned premium wines producers from Italy, France, Austria, Spain, Greece, New Zealand, South Africa, Argentina, Chile, Japan, Canada, and California, fostering powerful brands. Terlato is active in many organizations dedicated to the knowledge and appreciation of fine wine. Current memberships include Commanderie de Bordeaux, Confrérie de Taste Vin, and the Renaissance Club. He was honorary chair for the 2003 Detroit Wine Auction, as well as the 2007 Très Bonne Année auction in Pennsylvania. Terlato is very active in the business community with membership in the Economic Club of Chicago and the Commercial Club of Chicago. In 2012, he was honored as Businessman of the Year by the Italian-American Chamber of Commerce. In September 2013, he was honored as Industry Executive of the Year at the Market Watch Leaders Award dinner. In 2015, Cronache di Gusto named him one of the top 100 most important people in wine globally. Outside of the wine industry, Terlato is committed to education and community. Terlato was a member of the steering committee for the Lake Forest Country Day School Capital Campaign from 2002 until 2007 with his wife, Debbie, who co-chaired the Capital Campaign and was a trustee from 1996 until 2002. Bill and Debbie were members of the Parents Committee at Duke University from 2004 until 2011, and co-chairs of the committee from 2008 until 2011. They also served on the Parents Committee at the University of Miami, where Bill is also on the board of advisors to the School of Communication. Today, we also have the pleasure to have Amy Ezrin with us. She's one of 3 members of the Biermann Guy, a national importer and of wines of the Italian region of Piedmont, represented across North America by passionate distributors. A consultant to the wine and spirit industry, she's focused on supporting wineries to improve their presence in North America, assisting consortia and other associations to drive awareness of their products and regions, and on creating commercial opportunities for fine wines and spirits. As wine desk manager at the Italian trade agency in New York, she ran a government marketing and PR campaign to promote the diversity and quality of Italian wines. As senior vice president at Massanois Imports, national importer and direct distributor in New York, New Jersey, and California, she curated a diverse portfolio and oversaw a sales team of 30. She has worked for Popolare Selection and Skurnik Wines in New York, a graduate of the University of Chicago, an Italian wine ambassador of the Vinitaly International Academy, a WSET Advanced Certificate holder and a Cavaliere del Tartufo. Emmy is based in Brooklyn, New York. So here I leave my word to Amy.
Great. Thank you so much, Silvia. It's a pleasure to be here. I'd also like to, of course, thank the fabulous people at Vinitaly, including Giovanni Mantovani, for helping us to sponsor all of these wonderful sessions. As a Vinitaly Italian wine ambassador through Vinitaly, of course, I feel part of a member of that family. Let's get to our guest of honor today. May I call you Bill today? Bill, thank you so much for being here this morning. I think I'm not surprised to see some interest in hearing from you and your opinions on the wine industry today. I would love to start with a quick overview of Terlato, the company today, and a little bit of your history and where you are, what you're focused on right now.
Sure. So I'll give you a brief history and philosophy of the company. Both my grandparents had a single retail store in Chicago. My mom's parents, the Paternos, in the 1930s, and my dad, his parents came from New York and opened a store here in the 50s. That's when my parents met. We went from having the retail stores to getting involved in distribution in the mid-1940s to importing in early 1960s through Paterno Imports. Was Italian wines only. At one point, we had 7 distributing operations in Illinois. And then in the 90s, we started investing in wine brands, buying wineries, developing vineyards, and so on. One of the things that we saw was the closer we got to the source, the more control we had over the quality of the product and the more control over our own destiny. And the marketplace was a different scale. When we had individual retail shops, you know, your reach was maybe a couple of miles from your store. When we started doing distributing, first it was in the entire city of Chicago, then statewide. So we were able to influence the whole state. Our market became the United States when we started importing and selling across the US. And then as a producer, we can sell all over the world. So, you know, it was the idea of expanding the footprint. And then again, it was a very unusual migration, let's say up the food chain. And I think one of the things that happened is, one of the keys to our success has been that we've been on every side of the business. We know what it takes to be successful at every level. And I think in a lot of respects, that makes us a much better partner to people because we know what they're going through. We know the troubles that the distributors are having, the retailers. We understand the capital intensive nature of the business from the wineries, you know, carrying multiple vintages of inventory before you get the product sold, the investment necessary to make quality. It's an agricultural business as well. So the vagaries of you know, Mother Nature and being in an agricultural business impact the business as well. So I think all of those experiences, you know, have served us well in being able to be a much better partner and collaborator with all of the people that we work with.
Fantastic. So that you are officially now a 4th generation company, I believe.
Yes.
And you know, certainly you've been trailblazers in the industry. We should offer you our condolences for the recent passing of your father. He was, of course, a force of nature in this industry. As the quote unquote father of Pinot Grigio, can you tell us a little bit about, you know, his specific legacy within the company? Yeah.
I mean, you know, we're lucky to have him for 86 years, but we'll miss him every day. And sorry that we didn't have him for longer. You know, as you have said, he, you know, early on in the retail store, he wanted to educate himself about wine. He would do tastings every night after the store closed, wanting to learn about wines from around the world, trying to anticipate consumer tastes. I would say, one of the things he always said was that wine follows food culture, because people back in the 50s would say, you know, how come we don't drink the kind of fine wines that they drink in Europe? And he would say, well, we don't eat like they do yet. As soon as we learn to eat better and we develop a stronger food culture, wine is going to come along with that. And that's exactly what happened. He was visionary with regard to that, because he was able to anticipate trends that would happen before people even realized that there was a potential out there. Early on, he spent a lot of time in Italy. When the company started, it was only Italian wines. And then once we covered all the regions there, in order to have the opportunity to grow, we needed wines from other areas. But he really pioneered the Italian wines. And I'd say certainly the Pinot Grigio category, he's credited with, really putting that on the map in terms of quality. And really what we did at that time is, that was the first Italian wine that was on restaurants other than Italian restaurants. We were able to show that there was a consumer demand and interest in the wine that extended beyond just Italian restaurants. It was in hotels, steakhouses, really a level of distribution that had been unmatched for Italian wines up until that point. And I think that just opened the door. And as I said, the food culture has evolved tremendously. We went from being a country that ate to live to now being a country that lives to eat. Much like what we used to see in Europe when we would go there as a family when we were young. It seemed inevitable to us that would migrate over to the US. When I think of what Italian food was in the US when I was young and growing up, and what it is today, where you have, authenticity, regional cuisines, not just, spaghetti and meatball with a, Chianti flask with a candle in it and a checkered tablecloth, kind of the caricature. But the world's become a small place, through computers and internet and people traveling and access to information. The world has become very small. And so I think that's having influence, certainly in the United States and everywhere else as well.
Great. I mean, as really an innovator in the industry, what would you say is his legacy, and how does that translate to what you do today, more importantly? Yeah, so I think if I could focus on the one thing that he thought was most important, it was focusing on quality. That quality is something that endures, and quality is irreplaceable. If you think about it, everything that's prized in terms of consumer products is distinctive. If you have a commodity product, and what he would always say is, if you sell your product based on price, someone else can beat your price and you can lose your business. If you sell based on quality, somebody else has to come up with better quality to take your business away, and that's not as easy. So I think, when you think of kind of enduring brands, whether it's fashion, automotive, you name it, if you have something that's unique and distinctive, you have a much better chance of having longevity. And that was really our focus. We only work with family-owned companies. They have a different perspective. They have a long-term point of view. And we've worked with some public companies over the years, and you get guys that are there for 3 to 5 years, and they want to make a bonus or they want to get a payout on their stock options. And they don't worry about the long-term impact of their decisions, because that's going to be somebody else's mess to clean up. Here with us, if I make a mess, my kids are going to have to clean it up. So I want to be a lot more thoughtful and make sure that we keep things in a good direction. That's a great answer. I think, a lot of the folks attending today really want to hear, your opinions, of course, about the wine industry and, the luxury wine industry specifically. So I think we have to start by addressing the elephant in the room, which is the current state of affairs, right? So how do you see the wine industry today, given the very unique and unprecedented conditions in which we find ourselves?
Yeah, so let me give you a little bit of an overview, because I'm now 40 years in the business. And over that 40-year period, you see a lot of changes and you see a lot of things that happen. And I think in any business, change is inevitable. And if you want to be successful and you want to have a solid future, you have to be constantly reinventing yourself. What I've noticed is that the business runs, there's usually 10-year cycles. You have 2 or 3 years where it's really good and tailwinds and a lot of growth. You have 4 or 5 years that you can have some growth, but kind of, moderate. And then you have 1 or 2 years every decade where there's a challenge. If you go back just in my career, 1991, there was the real estate bust that happened in the United States. It had a great economic impact. 2001 was the tech bubble that burst and erased a lot of money from the stock market. 2008, we had a global financial crisis and a collapse. And now 2020, we have, coronavirus. I'd say they seem to be getting more intense as the decades have gone by, but the pattern is the same. And one of the things I've also noticed in those 2 or 3 years when things are going great, people think that it's going to be that way forever, but it's not. And in the 1 or 2 years when things are terrible, people think it's not going to get any better, but it does. So, our philosophy is always, look to the long term, try not to make decisions that are short-term thinking. You need to keep your eye on the future because things will get better. We're in a difficult situation right now. I mean, I look at our business and, starting in April, 20% of the business is done on premise in the US and 80% is retail. In our particular case, because of the mix of our products towards the high end, 50% of our business is restaurant and 50% is retail. Well, April and May, 50% of our business went to zero. And I think there can be a tendency to panic. Same thing in 2008, everything was going crazy. If you stay calm and you stay focused on the future, you find ways to deal with it. We pivoted to retail, and wanted to focus on that side of the market. Our people were out in the stores. They were helping stores restock. We were going to restaurants that were customers that were closed, but were doing takeout, and we were buying meals to bring to the retail stores and to the distributors for the people that were working late, restocking the shelves, all just, trying to create a sense of community and work together and collaborate, which we think is going to benefit us going forward. If you kind of look at how it's developed, that the on-premise business has gone from being down 98% in April to now down about 50% in September. So it's coming back. Our retail business went from being up 16% in April to in September, it was up 58%. So we now have recaptured and are growing again by virtue of the retail business. We did a focus on direct to consumer. We have a site called uncork.com where consumers can buy direct and have it shipped. That business is changing. I think that there will be kind of substantive long-term changes in people's behavior. I think entertaining at home is going to happen more. I know there are a lot of people, there's pent-up demand on people wanting to get back out to restaurants and be social and be with their friends. I think the restaurant business is going to have a great future and they don't have to worry. We're going to have about 25 or 30% of the restaurants that never reopen. So there'll be much less numbers of accounts out there. But the ones that are there that are working well, that are taking people's temperatures when they come in, that are doing the social distancing, making sure that putting air filtration systems that purify the air at a much more rapid pace. There's demand on the part of the people to get back in those places. And if you think about it, right now people aren't going on vacations. They're not traveling for business. They're probably hunkered down. We're starting to see improvement in the real estate market for the larger homes that people were kind of going away from because now they realize that they need space at home. But I think there's just a natural progression that will come with that, and kind of, again, the 10-year cycle and the ebb and flow that takes place.
That's a very interesting way to see it, and I would certainly agree that things take a very long time, and I think in our industry in particular, they take quite a long time, especially from launching new products, et cetera. COVID has, of course, created a unique set of circumstances that you've largely addressed. What would you say are some of the opportunities and possibly future trends that may develop out of this crisis that we're facing now?
Yeah, so I think what's ended up happening, and all the crises that have taken place over the decades that I've been in the business, it doesn't really change what's happening in the marketplace, but it just accelerates the pace of it. So I think the changes that are taking place now are changes that we're in process of developing. Whether you look at consolidation at the trade level, both on and off premise, consolidation at the distributor level, the different other aspects of the business, challenging things, the legalization of marijuana, kind of picking up steam in the U.S., climate change, we're dealing with fires, we're dealing with social unrest and disruptions in markets. I think that all of those things were aspects that were progressing, but that now have been accelerated as a result of the crisis. And maybe, nerves are rubbed a little bit raw, and people are a little less patient than they used to be, for some of these things. But, going back to what I said, I mean, obviously, we worry about all these things. We have wildfires, taking place in California in the vineyards, probably going to lose the entire 2020 vintage in Napa Valley. Good news is there was big harvest in 2018 and 19. So there's wine out there. Mother Nature finds a way of kind of balancing itself over time. So now, we're going to have a largely, unusable vintage for those that even try to bring grapes in. But it'll balance itself off. It'll create opportunities elsewhere. People aren't going to stop drinking wine. It's become part of a lifestyle here in the United States, which is great. People are much more conscientious of the food that they're consuming and what they put in their body. So if you think about it, when I started in the business, in a restaurant, people would ask, is the fish fresh or is it frozen? Now they want to know if it's farm raised or wild, if it's sustainably harvested, how it's shipped. What's going to happen is people are going to start to ask the same questions about their wine. 95% of the wine that's sold, they can't tell you the vineyard where it came from or the farming practices. People buy bulk grapes through brokers. They buy bulk wine that's been produced by somebody else. You don't know what kind of chemicals or fertilizers have been used in the vineyard. You don't know what levels of cropping they were using. How many tons per acre were coming off those vines. What it gives you is a geographic designation. You know that it comes from, Montalcino or Friuli or Napa Valley, but you don't know how those products were grown. I think in the future, and one of the ways that we've been moving is to work more with estate-grown products, because we think that people are going to want to know where's the wine come from, where's the winery that it's made, who's the winemaker, and the more that you can identify the source of product, the better it's going to be going forward.
Great. Commitment to quality, number one, is the thing I'm hearing here. Let's imagine a scenario where, outside of COVID, let's say you were starting fresh today. You were starting all over, and it was a brand new Terlato Wines. What would you want that to look like? How would you get started? What would your vision be?
So the first thing that we always try to start with is, why should somebody buy this product? There's a lot of products out there. You look, last year, I think there was 180,000 labels approved by the TTB in the US. So there's no lack of competition. And I think what a lot of people do is they kind of view their business in terms of their area or their country. If you think about it and you want to have a $25 bottle of wine, or that's what the cost needs to be to create a healthy margin so that you can continue to invest and grow, you need to think about every other $25 wine that's out there, not just the ones that are from your region. and why someone should buy this product as opposed to another product. If you don't have a good answer for that, you need to keep going back and re-examining your premise until you do. And it can't just be, well, this is a nice quality product, because there's a lot of great quality products out there that never find their way to the marketplace. And then it's just, focusing on distribution. The United States is a big country. It can kind of seem daunting to people. But the one thing is, progress is made a step at a time, not in leaps and bounds. And I think a lot of people look at the United States and think that, there should be an overnight success. And what I would tell you is, we have a number of very successful brands that we've developed, over the decades. We're always looking for a brand whose success is measured in decades, not in quarters or years. And what I can tell you is everything that seemed to be an overnight success was years in the making. There was a lot of work and a lot of effort and a lot of energy that went early on to get those brands to a tipping point where there was a level of awareness in the US. So nothing comes easy. Sacrifice, you're going to have to make sacrifices. It's one of the things that we've always taught our kids is nobody owes you anything. What you're able to accomplish is going to be a direct result of what you're willing to put into it and the sacrifices you're willing to make. So I think, a lot of people, like they'll take a pass at something and they'll, if it doesn't work out, they kind of, say, all right, I tried, it didn't work. Our philosophy is you need to be persistent. If it didn't work, you need to pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and you need to find another route to market or another, proposition that you're going to put to the market for a particular product to try and get more people engaged with it.
Mm-hmm. Great. So you made two very important points in there, which I would say are looking at distribution and looking at, and keeping in mind the amount of time really that it takes to launch a brand. So if we want to speak more directly to the Italian companies, the Italian wineries that are following us here, and keeping in mind that you're speaking from a perspective as an importer and distributor of fine wine. So in the luxury category, I think it's important to establish that we're speaking about that sector more so than trade wines, so to speak. What are your nuggets of advice that you would share with these Italian wine companies looking to get into the market or improve their presence in the market?
The first is spend time here. You need to realize what the market is like. People have a perception of what the market is, but you need to come over and you need to go into the different retail outlets, and not just in New York, because everybody goes to New York, which is a market that is all independents. There's no chains there. When you look at the way the business is evolving over the United States, the chains, the Costco's, Total Wines, and so on, are eating up more and more of the business. You need to go into a Total Wine and see that they've got 8,000 different wine SKUs on the shelf. So they've got a very broad selection. It can be very confusing. So one, come over here and spend time and understand what the market is really like, understand what the competitive environment is. You need to identify a competitive set. You can't just say it's, wine is the competitive set, because it's too broad. You need to focus on which are the brands that have some sort of presence that you see as an opportunity for you, either because you have a quality advantage, or there's something that you're bringing to the market with the product itself that creates some sort of an advantage and an opportunity for people to look at that. And then it's just getting out there and kind of the shoe leather, get out in the street, call on people, do tastings, just try to create awareness. The other thing is a willingness to invest. Again, it's a big market. I think, we've always done a considerable amount of advertising, close to $20 million a year is spent on advertising and promotion for our group of brands. And if you're not willing to advertise to create awareness for a brand, you're kind of lost in a sea of choices that people have that they don't know that much about.
Right. For those that have not got a presence in the U.S. at all, what would you suggest in terms of strategies for approaching importers even?
Again, I think they need to come here and they need to understand the market. You know, we do some exporting of the products from the wineries that we own. You know, and I'd say that we kind of, you know, muddled along doing that until we started to go spend time, you know, in the UK, in Canada, you know, in the Scandinavian countries to understand what the marketplace looked like and to understand what the competitive set was. Because you can't just pick up a phone and call somebody and say, would you like to, you know, sell my wine? I think the other thing is also to do your due diligence. You know, one of the fallouts of this crisis, I think, is going to be that there will be companies that go away. You know, not just restaurants, but there'll be distributors that cease to exist. There'll be importers that cease to exist. So you want to know that you're working with somebody that's has integrity, honesty, financially sound, that they're going to be there for the long run as well, not just, you know, of the moment, because there's a lot of people that come and go. And I think when you come here and you look at the market and you look at, when you look at where the product needs to be distributed, you need to look at what's, you know, if my wine needs to be in these places, what's the best chance that I have for my product to be in those places? And I think it's, you know, it starts to explain itself to you as you start to see what's happening here.
Fantastic. So what are some, respect to, you know, if you wanted to import your wines to the US, you know, even 10 years ago, the conditions were what they were then. What would you say are some of the current challenges and some of the changes, shall we say, in the marketplace today and in the near future relative to what we experienced in the past?
Yeah, so I think the consolidation of all the tiers is creating challenges. You have consolidation, so the pipeline is becoming more narrow, but you also have a proliferation of brands and a proliferation of brands that want to be sold in the US in particular. If you think about it, all of the other producing countries in the world sell very little imported wine. You know, in Italy, there's not a lot of wine sold there that's not Italian. In France, it's the same. In Australia, it's the same. The United States is unique, you know, probably because it's a melting pot of people coming from all over the world, where you have a high percentage of wine that's sold from around the world. But people also have to be mindful of the fact that that wine production in this country is getting better. So that's also presenting another challenge, because as the production here is improved, as the quality is improved, you see that gaining a bigger market share as well. But I think that, you know, again, just understanding when you look at the consolidation that's taken place, it becomes critically important to understand what who the potential accounts are for a product, because I would tell you that, you know, if you think of in terms of on-premise, you know, a multi-unit or multi-state operator is probably not, you know, going to be very open to a relatively obscure, you know, lesser known brand, you know, taking up space on their wine list. I think one of the things that the virus will do, I think there's been kind of a tendency over the past 15 years or so for the restaurants to have enormous wine lists. You know, we went from restaurants having, you know, 80 wines on the wine list to having 180 wines on the wine list to having 300 wines on the wine list, and so on. You know, I think that the places that are going to have 2,000 wines on the wine list, you know, they're going to start to squeeze that down. The financial burden of carrying all of that inventory is during this particular period, I think is going to have an effect. So I think you're going to see people reduce the number of wines that are on their wine list, which again is going to make it more challenging, because not only are there wines that were in distribution that now will be out of distribution, but someone who's trimming back their list or their set on the shelf is not looking to add more wines when they're looking to cut wines and cut spaces. So that's going to be a challenge. And I think it's also being realistic. There's a pretty simple equation here. Every product has a rate of turn. You're going to turn so many cases per account. So if your turn is 4 cases per account, and you want to do 4,000 cases, you need to be in 1,000 accounts. If you're not in 1,000 accounts, you're not going to sell 4,000 cases. You can't do it in 100 accounts. And the same thing, if a brand wants to do 40,000 cases, they're going to be in 10,000, need to be in 10,000 accounts. Now you have to look and say, okay, if we need to be in 10,000 accounts, how many is that going to be in New York, in New Jersey, in Massachusetts, in Illinois, in Florida, and Texas? And then when you go call on an importer or a distributor, if you look at it, we deal with 100,000 restaurant accounts in the United States. If you need to be in 10,000 accounts and your distributor network only calls on 3,000 accounts, well, guess what? You're not gonna hit the volumes that you want to hit. So then on the other side of the equation that's balanced off is the companies that do have broader coverage and broader reach also have huge books. So now how do you become relevant to them? In the end, what I would say is everything is driven by profit. There's a profit incentive. In order to invest, you need to have profit. In order to invest in people, in order to invest in marketing for your brands, in order to invest in carrying inventory, there needs to be profit. So one of the things that we've always worked to do is to make our brands very profitable for the distributors and the trade, because we think that helps get them focused, on the products to a greater extent. If they're making $12 a bottle on this product instead of $6 a bottle on this product, it's likely that they'll put a little bit more effort and energy behind selling that product in the marketplace. And the other thing that we always try to resist is you price your product correctly, and then try to avoid discounting the product, because it cheapens the brand. And if you think about it, you lower your price by 10%, you're not making 10% less, you're probably making 30% less, because that comes right off the bottom line. There's no other cost savings associated with a price reduction. So again, we don't think you can discount your way to success or to profitability. But there's always a temptation to do that. When there's a lack of good tools to be able to get your product marketed, the discount becomes the one tool that exists, and we'd say that's not a very good tool on its own.
Right, that's very interesting. So, upon entry, to have a very carefully studied pricing strategy, to be very aware of where your wines are going to lend in terms of price point, how it translates, and how you can guarantee that the end customers, from the distributor to the restaurant or retailer, are going to be making a good profit on your product. I think that's essential advice, and something that's often overlooked, in terms of a practical approach. I think this brings us to a really interesting question, and something that you alluded to earlier, at least when we were talking about your father's philosophy on eating relative to drinking. What do you see? And we think that younger consumers are drinking differently than their parents today. If you agree with that, what would you say are some of the changing behaviors in drinking patterns when it comes to wine, and particularly quality wine?
Yeah, I think that it's interesting because, again, when I started in the business, the people that were my age group, they were drinking beer. And then as they got a little bit older, they got into spirits. And then it really was, kind of later, mid 40s, 50s, and so on, that they were into food and they were into wine, a more moderate alcohol product and so on. I've noticed that young people are into food and they're getting into wine younger. Their tastes are different. They're not so tradition bound. So I think kind of innovative products and, products that are a little irreverent, are finding a way to the market. I think you have to be mindful of taste profile of the product. But again, all of these things go in cycles. There was a cycle where, everything was kind of, overripe, highly extracted, over oaked, over everything in the wine, and they became very popular. Then all of a sudden the pendulum started to go back the other way, and people were looking for product that was more balanced and less spikes in the flavors. There's always going to be a sub-segment of the population that's going to like something that's on the extremes. But generally, I think what will happen is over time, it's products that pair themselves well with food, because everybody eats. People have become more interested in eating. I think right now there's a lot of experimentation. There's a lot of wines that we see there that, I refer to them as sweet. There's residual sugar in red wines and white wines. I think that when people are young, we have kind of a sweet tooth in the United States. We grow up on a, candy, ice cream, soda pop culture. So I think that, some of those wines that I refer to as sweet, it's a low level of residual sugar, but it's still there. And if you're used to drinking dry wines that I think lend themselves to food, it becomes easily perceptible. But everything that happens to get people more interested in food and more interested in wine creates an opportunity long term. And one of the, I always try to look for the silver lining. And one of the benefits of what's happened with the crisis is as people were at home, as they were, spending less, whether it's on vacations or going out to dinner or whatever, they started to move up and they started to drink better. So, if they were going to a restaurant and they were having a wine that was $100 on the wine list, now they're staying at home and that wine probably sells for $50 in the retail store. So now all of a sudden they're like, well, I would have spent $100 on this. They might spend $75 on a better bottle of wine because they're drinking it at home. It's still costing them less than what they would have paid outside. And we definitely saw a trading up and an interest in better quality during this period. That's very hard to go back on. Once you start to drink the better wines and you taste the better wines, it's pretty hard to start to go back to where you were. So we think that's a good progression as well. And that, speaks towards great opportunity going forward for the fine wines.
You mentioned irreverent as a descriptor. I think that's very interesting. That certainly speaks to also your packaging as a way to promote and as a way to describe your wines, for sure.
We also we have here Giovanni Mantovani, the CEO of Veronafiere, and he would like to welcome also our guest speaker Terlato and say a few words on Veronafiere.
I want first of all to thank Mr. Terlato for the contribute he gave us a very, very important contribute in this series of webinar we organized in the last month to understand better what is happening in the USA market. The goal is to finalize all this information for the events we are organizing in November, when will organize Wine2Wine. That is a big forum about the wine, the world of the wine and the markets of the wine. And on the other side there is a little exhibition with, I hope, about 300 exhibitors, 300 wineries that will present the news to the markets. First of all, we'll arrive at the beginning of that meeting with a very, very interesting forum focused on how the market are changing in the world in this period and what we can imagine will happen after the pandemic situation. We are doing just in this period, realizing that in this period, a new survey about the trends of the market and about how the market are changing. And so the next 21st of November, we organize this international forum. And I really hope to have also Mr. Terlato with us in a digital solution, naturally, or also if you want, personally, is for us a pleasure, naturally, but the easier solution, I think, is the better. And that is the first opportunity to understand better for the Italian industry, the Italian wine industry, what is happening in the world. Fortunately, the last month was not so bad for the Italian wine, but now is the moment to have the point of view of the market, understanding better what is happening and what will happen in the future. And I think it's the right moment at the end of November to do this. So thank you, and I hope it is one more occasion to stay together, to discuss, to speak about, to talk about the Italian wine. And I know that Mr. Terlato has and have to also for the future a very important role for the Italian wine. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Giovanni Mantovani. Thank you for Vinitaly and Wine2Wine to exist. And I would like now to...
Actually, we are looking to the next year in Italy, and we are working hard to organize it at the better.
Yeah, we missed Vinitaly this year. I'm sure everyone did. But we especially also with the chamber, it was for sure sad not to have this event this year. Anyway, thank you again, Mr. Mantovani, for being also here today with us.
I think we've really covered a lot of fantastic ground today. You know, the message being a focus on quality and a focus on, you know, commitment to your brand and your identity, and to working with your distributors to ensure that you have a good strategy for the US. Bill, is there anything else that you would like to share on this topic?
No, you know, I'm happy to be here. I hope that some of the things that I've said resonated with people. You know, I know there are some questions there that we didn't get to. The only thing I'd say is, you know, if they have a way to contact you, Silvia, or you, Amy, I'd be happy to follow up with anybody and answer any questions that they might have, or you know, something that's directly related to some of their businesses, because I see we have a lot of wine people that are on here, and you know, to try and give whatever, you know, good advice and direction that we could provide to help people develop their business here. The only thing that I'll add is that you know, as we said, that, you know, wine follows food culture, and I think one of the greatest things for Italian wine is Italian food. Italian food is the ultimate comfort food. It doesn't matter where people come from, anywhere in the world, everybody loves Italian food. I think it's one of the reasons that some of the other countries that that had success with wines that became popular and then, you know, kind of went by the wayside is because they didn't have a cuisine underpinning their product. We're fortunate enough as Italians to have that. I think that's going to be something very important, you know, not just now and in the future, but for decades to come as well. And again, you know, I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks to the Italian-American Chamber of Commerce and Giovanni and the Vinitaly group, and Amy, to you for helping to moderate this. And again, if there's anything that that people would like me to follow up on, I'm happy to, you know, receive any questions or calls from people and talk to them as well.
Great.
Thank you very much, Mr. Terlato. We really appreciate the time you gave us today and all the insights. They were very helpful. I'm sure all the companies that were quite a lot today this was very important for them to listen to you. And we are here, as you mentioned, all the questions that have not been answered. You can email to info@iacc-chicago.com and we will make sure to follow up on that. And I wanted to also thank everyone for joining us. Also, Amy, thanks for your help and your great moderation. Giovanni Mantovani, again, Mr. Terlato. We hope to continue collaborating with all of you, and we hope to keep being connected in every possible way. Thank you, and I would say we close up here. Ciao. I will send everyone the recording of today with all the contact information, so we will not get lost. Ok.
Grazie Silvia.
Ciao a tutte le
Grazie
aziende.
a tutti.
Grazie a tutti, arrivederci.
Bye.
Arrivederci.